Hi guys, so what you're looking at currently on my screen right now is a glimpse of my work. I had logged into WordPress and I realized that I needed to stage a website to see whether the plugin that was requiring an update was compatible with the version of WordPress that I had. So I had to learn how to stage a website. So the first thing I did, I went to GPT. I asked what staging is to GPT, and GPT helped me understand actually what staging is. So what is staging? Before that, let me explain what is WordPress because I'm using WordPress. WordPress is this super popular tool that helps people build websites without needing to write a bunch of code. So whether you're creating a blog about your favorite sandwiches or running an online store for neat hats, chances are you might be using WordPress. In fact, it powers over 40% of the internet. So back to staging. What is staging? So staging is like, imagine having your website as a big beautiful cake. You don't want to decorate it while people are already eating it, right? So instead you make a practice cake first, where you can try out different designs, add sprinkles, and maybe even test if the whipped cream eyebrows look good on it. So that practice cake, that's your staging site. It's a copy of your real site but behind the scenes. So you can safely test updates, try out new plugins, or mess around with the design without actually affecting your live site. So that's what I did, because I had realized that if I wanted to update that plugin that was telling me it was incompatible with the version of WordPress that I had installed, it might have messed up with the live site. So what I decided to do is that I created a staging site, and then I updated that version, checked whether it had any errors or something that would create a problem, and I found out that it didn't. So this was day 2. After trying to figure out everything about staging, I went back, looked at a few tutorials, and then I decided to now try out what staging is. So I went back to GPT again. I clarified a few things. Then I noticed that there's a plugin called WP Staging that I had to install. So that's what I did. I installed it first. Then after installing it, I just followed the instructions GPT gave me, which were quite elaborate. And if something was not clear, I had to ask it again and again. I encourage people to use GPT because it makes work easier and more efficient. And if you really feel like it's not yet that efficient, you need to ask it a bit more specific questions, and then it will elaborate further. In case it doesn't do that, there are always YouTube channels that are teaching people how to do that, because I also checked out a channel that showed me the whole process. So mine was to just keep referring to GPT and also using that YouTube channel as my reference. I just continued, and then I installed the plugin, and then after installing the plugin, I followed the instructions, and then to that I just decided to test it out. So if you're ever wondering how to use WordPress, there are actually numerous YouTube channels that teach people how to use WordPress and learn about it and even make a website from it. I might leave a link down below. And if you're ever wondering, or if you're deciding to get into the tech space and you're wondering where you should start, a good place would be WordPress. But I wouldn't advise you to start with WordPress if you really want to know the process of coding a website. WordPress becomes more efficient if you know the coding process. If you don't know, you're still able to learn. It's not that you really have to know how to code so that you can start using WordPress. But WordPress is how do I say it? It makes work very, very easier. And then now you just basically build a website without really knowing the coding side of it that much. But when your website malfunctions, or when it crashes, or when something happens or just stops working, you really need knowledge on coding to understand why your site is not working. And that's why I advise people that if you want to know how to build a website, WordPress is good. I'm not saying WordPress is bad. WordPress is actually really, really good to learn how to do that. But I'd advise you to also have a basic knowledge of how coding works, so that when you find yourself in a situation where your website, or the client you're working for, the client you're dealing with, their site has suddenly crashed or something has happened to the site, you might need that coding knowledge to figure out why it's not working. So another good place I'd recommend learning how to code is Udemy web development course. I left a link on my previous videos, but I'm still going to leave a link again in case you're interested. And coding is not hard as long as you are dedicated to the journey, because it might take a while to learn how to code, and these are just markup languages. So there are things you might need to learn a bit more, like JavaScript and other things like Python if you're interested. But yeah, just learn how to code if you're interested, so that you'd know how to do all these things. Thank you for watching. See you in part 2, as I will show you how I finished staging the site.